Very good. We'll still have some people coming in, I think. We have overbooked the room, so let's hope not everybody comes to join us here today. But I'd like to kick it off and say just a few welcoming remarks. So welcome to this year's ODI Global Public Conference on Building Resilient Futures. And also welcome to our new site, to our new ODI Global Hub here in Westminster, London. We're quite proud about the space that we have and that it's in such a beautiful location. So it's a pleasure to host you all. It's a pleasure to see so many of you again. And whether you're here in person or joining online, we hope this will be a very animated 2 days. Now, before kicking off with the main agenda, I want to say a few words just to set the scene. This conference has been going for some 20 years, and it's been a key event in our ODI's calendar. It helps us stay in contact with long-standing partners. It helps us build new relationships. It provides a space to share experiences, to bring in the practitioners, the finance ministries, to hear from everybody about the issues of the day. Now, the conference has been a stable feature of ODI's life, but the context clearly has not been stable. And it has been particularly unstable in these last few years. And the context in which we work now is the theme of this conference, how to deal with an unstable context. Just 2 years ago in 2023, this conference was discussing the polycrisis. That was sort of the fashionable word of the day. I hear a bit less of it, and it's partly because we're getting used to the fact that there is a polycrisis, and we just have lots of crisis and lots of uncertainty. At that time, it looked like the world was experiencing an exceptional moment, a confluence of events. It was the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the surging energy and food prices triggered by Russia's war in Ukraine, it was the accelerating impacts of climate change, financial instability in a variety of emerging markets. Those things were coming together, and we felt, well, this is a very exceptional moment. Now, those events have reshaped government finances since then, and that was the theme of our conference 2 years ago. Global public debt was higher at the time than at any point since the Second World War. Major economies were still working out the balance between unwinding their support to households, to businesses, and rebuilding a medium-term perspective, rebuilding the investments required to support a safe, sustainable planet. And then, of course, we had that quite special election year of 2024, which added its own range of uncertainties. And so today it's clear that this was not a brief moment of confluence of events. While commodity prices have stabilized to a degree, global politics have become far more volatile. We have trade wars which have escalated. We have real wars, including the conflict in Gaza, in Sudan, elsewhere. We have a reduction in resource availability for many countries, and I think that was the topic of yesterday's roundtable, partly due to the aid cuts, partly due to the ballooning debt repayments that we see in many countries. Global institutions have been very severely weakened over the past few months, and that reduces the prospects and our capabilities to act collectively to deal with these challenges, ranging from security to climate change to artificial intelligence. So this changing context is making countries more vulnerable to shocks. It is also increasing uncertainty over global growth prospects, and that's the new normal that we have to reckon with. Now, finance ministries have to guide governments to build more resilient economies in this context. They have to work with peers to shape the global institutions to serve their needs. And that idea is simple enough. A resilient economy can absorb major shocks. It can absorb structural changes without significantly impacting on the overall welfare of the population. This has at least 3 dimensions. One dimension is the capability of responding to shocks in the short term. A second is more in the medium and to longer term. It's the need to reduce vulnerabilities to shocks. That might entail investments in adaptation, adaptation to climate change, or policies that diversify the economy and the revenue base. Ultimately, though, building resilience will require strong and sustained growth, because that is what is going to provide the fiscal space to respond to shocks. It is what is going to provide for investments that proof against shocks. And we cannot pretend that this is simple. Shocks come in many different forms, as we know, and responses carry their own challenges and carry their own risks. Let's think of digitalization. Digital technology helped businesses to continue working during the COVID pandemic, but has left them more vulnerable to cyber attacks. There are also trade-offs. There are trade-offs in particular between the short and the longer term. In the short term, the need to create buffers to be able to weather the shocks, but then that means that there's less finance available for the investments in reducing vulnerabilities in the medium term. And then when the fiscal space is constrained, as is the case in so many economies today, those trade-offs become sharper and more acute. We don't assume, we cannot assume that these issues are new. In fact, this issue of building vulnerability has been with us for a long time. It is sort of the essence of economic growth and development. Resilience is a product of development itself. People living in advanced economies today are much less vulnerable, for instance, to climate shocks, but they're also much less vulnerable to many other shocks because they have social protection systems that have the depth, they have financial systems that have the depth, they have assets that can carry them through short-term shocks. And so building resilience is in fact the essence of economic development, and finance ministries must find their way, must map their way through that complex challenge. But they have to do so given the context with increased urgency. Now, in those 2 days, we want to engage. We want you to share your insights. We want to challenge your ideas, our ideas, and the expertise in this room is exactly what we need to build real practical resilience in the face of uncertainty. So hopefully by tomorrow night, we'll come out of this with a bunch of practical ideas for how finance ministries in particular and other players can build resilience over time. Agenda for the conference, just very briefly. Today, we will focus mostly on how governments can anticipate and respond to shocks. So trying to understand the different kinds of shocks that countries face. And then we will explore the mechanisms that governments use to respond to these shocks. And then later today, we have the pleasure and the privilege, really, of having Antoinette Sayé with us, who will deliver our keynote speech, sharing her reflections on how countries can build resilience in today's uncertain times and how international financial institutions can support countries in doing this. And Antoinette has just an exceptional background, has an exceptional range of experiences to be able to tell us and to give us some guidance for our discussions here. And that will prepare us for tomorrow, when we'll turn to the strategies that governments use to reduce vulnerabilities and to adapt to structural changes. We will ask how countries can make effective investment decisions and sustain growth in an era of uncertainty. And we will then end by reflecting on the politics of building a resilient economy at both the global and the national levels. How can finance ministries advance their interests in global forums when national concerns are increasingly taking precedence over shared challenges? So global challenges in a my country first in politics. How do we do that? I will be having a conversation, fireside chat, or how we call that, with Ivan Oliveira of the Brazilian Finance Ministry, who is dealing with exactly these issues, and where Brazil is an interesting case study in how to build national support for a global agenda. So now with that, we have a very packed agenda, and I want to hand over to Frédéric, the director of ODI Global's Development and Public Finance Program, to kick us off with the first session. Thank you very much, everyone.